Hello, everyone. This is Howard Fox, your host of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration of the great outdoors. Our guest today is Edgar Castillo. Edgar is a retired law enforcement officer. He's also served in the United States Marine Corps for over 12 years. And Edgar has a passion for exploring the landscapes in search of wild birds and wild places. He documents his travels across public lands throughout his home state of Kansas and the greater U.S., hunting in open fields, walking tree lines, and busting through plum thickets. Edgar, it's a pleasure to have you on the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast.
Hey, how you doing, Howard? Thank you very much for having me on as a guest. I really do appreciate it.
I want to say I'm grateful that you're on as well. For our listeners, I had the pleasure of meeting Edgar earlier this year when we both attended the annual conference of the Outdoor Writers Association of America. That was my first conference. Edgar, was this your first conference?
It was my first conference as well.
Fantastic. And really had a chance to get to know Edgar and learn more about his work and really for his interest in, hunting and his specifically wild birds. And I thought, one of my goals, Edgar, was to come away from that conference with individuals like yourself who would be interested in recording a podcast episode. So I've achieved my goal. And so hopefully we're going to help you achieve future goals for yourself. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Edgar, I'm curious, before we kind of get into this conversation around your hunting interest in the outdoors, can you share a little bit about your background? Because I'm always interested, to share with our readers, how individuals get started in these special interests, these hobbies. And so if you could share, just spend a little time talking about that with us, I would appreciate that.
Well, to start off, I was born in Central America in the country of Guatemala. We came here when I was a young boy. My father was not a hunter, was not something that was popular in Central America. It was more done for sustainability as far as an added food resource. So when we came here to the U.S., hunting was brand new to him. And basically it started out for him. He walked over to a neighbor and asked him what he was doing. Tom told him, hey, I'm getting ready to go duck hunting. A week later, my dad was out duck hunting. That's pretty much it. And then, being a young boy, seeing his father, doing all these strange and new and wonderful things, I started following along, and that's how I just kind of followed my dad's footsteps as becoming a bird hunter.
I think that is fantastic. And especially, your dad just, walks over to the neighbor. I mean, my neighbor used to go deer hunting. All right. But I think this idea that, your dad, walks over to the neighbor, finds out what he's doing. And, and a week later he's out there doing it. And what was it like going out with your dad and, your neighbor and then some, just to getting out there into the open fields or in the woods and going hunting? What was it like?
Well, it was a brand new experience. And let me back up real quick. A week later, my dad was out duck hunting. And then I think shortly after that, the story goes, he was also introduced to deer hunting. And someone shot a deer, and my dad turned out to be very allergic to venison meat. So because of that, he never got into big game or deer hunting. He just stayed at doing upland and waterfowl. So that's why he became so passionate about that. And again, that's why I started doing that as well. But to answer your question, it was brand new to both my father and I. We hadn't been here very long. There was a language barrier with my father. I already knew English because we had to in school. But for me to experience, the variety of elements, temperature, I was used to, balmy 70 degrees and 60 degrees where we live, and then we come here and now we're out, in the dead of winter sitting in the duck blind waiting for some ducks to come in. And so I had to get used to the weather and the temperature and all that. But I took it all in. And as soon as I experienced it, I knew I was hooked.
Wow, that's fantastic. Now, you have been hunting birds pretty much since then, or did you take a respite through the military or law enforcement, or have you just been consistently doing this wherever you could?
There was a break in the action as old teenage boys, girls, best friends, and cars came into the picture, not necessarily in that order, right?
I knew
And
you were going to say that, by the way, Edgar. I
yeah,
did know that.
and so there was times when when my father, like I would see him get ready, I knew what was going to happen, and I opted to go and do something else. So during late junior high, definitely high school, I did not participate in going out with my dad. And I wish I would have, but as soon as after college, I joined the Marine Corps, and then I came back on my first deployment. The first thing that we did was to go out pheasant hunting, and then since that time, it's been a constant thing in my life.
That's fantastic. Now, as I have been getting to know more about you and your work, and I have to admit, if I go outside my front door, there's birds everywhere. All right. Even here in Las Vegas, there's birds. This idea that there are wild game birds out in the fields, perhaps even in the desert or in the Midwest, the Kansas state of Kansas, where you're at. I lived in Michigan, Chicago. It never really dawned on me that there are wild birds that individuals would go looking for to hunt. Now, I know about duck hunting and that sort. When did you begin to focus on, or perhaps you didn't, the focus on the type of wild bird that was really of interest to you?
Well, when I first started hunting, obviously I was doing with what my father was doing. Here in Kansas, we had pheasants, bobwhite quail, and prairie chickens, and obviously waterfowl and doves. So that's for a long time, for many years, that's all I knew. And as I was growing up, I would follow my dad. We would go to a local gun shop where he would buy his shotguns and hunt licenses, and I would always peruse through the hunt magazine. So I knew there was other game birds out there. And if you look at, American history, wildfowl, turkey and grouse and partridge and woodcock and quail have always been intertwined with sustaining not only Native Americans, but the early settlers. And it's just, especially during the 30s and 40s, it was very popular. And so I got into reading and doing the historical side of the upland hunting. And that's what carried me into learning that there's other game birds outside of what's here in the state of Kansas. And that's what started my kick on trying to travel to chase these other birds in these other, wild places.
Okay. And I have to ask you, you and I were chatting just before we hit the record button. You asked me how was my Thanksgiving, and I've shared it. And for me, Thanksgiving has always been the turkey. Sometimes I get the wild turkey. If we're really getting creative, it's a fried turkey. It's in that big pot of oil, and hopefully you don't burn down my house. What did you have for Thanksgiving dinner this year?
We had a turkey, but we always try to add a game bird, one or two that either I've shot or my dad. But it's typical for us during Thanksgiving and Christmas to add. Usually it's pheasants and quail, and then prairie chicken. Most of the other birds that I shoot, we usually eat out in the field anyway, so they don't make it back home. They get eaten pretty quick.
Okay. Now, by the way, Edgar, and as all my listeners know, I'm a very opportunistic podcaster. You just mentioned you and your dad. So I would love, if you wouldn't mind, I'm sure you have it somewhere on Facebook or your Instagram page, a picture of you and your dad out there in the field hunting together.
Yeah, I can get you that.
All right. I knew you would. So, but I figured I'm going to ask it right now because you mentioned it, and that way it
Yeah,
wouldn't slip my mind.
yeah.
So so question just back about Thanksgiving now. Does who cooked the bird in the wild birds? Who cooked them? You or your wife?
It's oh no, it's my wife.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right.
my wife and my mother, they're the cooks. They're the ones that prepare the meals, and I clean the birds, and but I did this year kind of dive into preparing the birds myself with the help of with the help of my wife, and it's going very well. So next year my goal is to take care of that.
Okay. Okay. Now, by the way, again, I'm an opportunistic podcaster. If there's a recipe your wife or your mother perhaps want to share with the wild birds, we can definitely put that up on the show notes or a link to it if you've got it elsewhere. So I'm
Yep.
all about food, by the way,
Yep.
besides,
Yep.
okay. All right. See,
Yeah.
we're covering a lot of ground here, Edgar. This is
I
important. This is
like it.
important stuff, you know?
Yeah.
When you began to really, get out of the state and discover other species of game birds, what advice would you give to an individual who wanted to follow in similar footsteps? I mean, you had the benefit of growing up with your dad and just kind of, you know, being with him, and as his interests evolved, so did yours to where you are today. But if you're a new person, maybe they come across this podcast episode and it's like, hey, I want to do that. What kind of advice would you give them to get them started in exploring this sport?
Excellent question. And I get that question quite a bit. I would say the easiest way is, first find someone, whether that's, whether you know someone personally or through some contacts. Now we have social media. I get contacted quite a bit through Instagram from individuals who are wanting to get into upland bird hunting. But there's several organizations out there: Pheasants Forever, Quail Forever, Ducks Unlimited, and I can go on and on. But those groups are made. They're there to help people that are wanting to get involved in conservation and habitat, but they're also there to mentor new individuals wanting to get into hunting. So I would say find someone or find an organization and then get plugged into that. And if not, there's a lot of groups, local associations that you can reach out and find that'll put you into contact, tell you what you need to do, and even outfit you and tell you, as far as like what you have to have as far as requirements to legally hunt and whatnot.
The licensing aside, because I'm sure there's state licensing, maybe there's even local licensing. Licensing aside, what is the approximate, within I don't know, a couple $100 investment that someone would have to make to get out there and begin the hunting? Let's assume he or she is with, a more experienced hunter as a group, but what kind of investment are we looking at?
It just as with anything, you're gonna at some point you're gonna have to, invest a little bit of money, obviously. But like again, to go back on myself, when I get asked, hey, do you mind taking me out? I've been doing this for a long time, so I've got plenty of gear. And if you find someone that's been around and that has accumulated all that gear, you can get a shotgun and a vest rather easily. But as far as purchasing, all you need a good pair of boots and a shotgun. And like I said, a basic shotgun, you're talking a couple $100, and a good decent pair of waterproof boots, and you're set. And then you can find a secondhand bird vest probably under $40, and that's all you need. But as with anything, as you get more into it, you're going to find that comfort plays a factor into it, and then that's where if you want a nicer shotgun, you want a nicer vest, that's when all those things kind of come into play.
Okay.
But very basic, very basic.
Okay, so really, it's not a huge barrier to entry, and but you are
No,
so right. I mean, once you get started, when the interest grows, then so does your investment. What I love about your sport, and I would put fishing or angling in there as well, is your sport is incredibly colorful, which mean, for me, I'm saying, thinking visually, if I was photographing you with your family, your friends out there hunting, everything from hold the gun, the vest, the hat, the colors of these wild upland birds out in the fields. I mean, you talked about, in your prep for the show, and I added in show notes that walking in open fields, tree lines, and plum thickets, there's just so much color and variety, from all aspects of this sport. And I think that's what really amazes me, and it really interests me because you know, the you're not just doing this activity, but there's so much other, food for your senses, so to speak.
right.
And what what has that done for you? Just the fact that you're out in these open fields and you're in nature and the colors, the smells, the sounds. What's that done for you?
Well, for me, obviously, when I was growing up with my father, I loved being outdoors. We were an outdoor family, but it started changing for me after I joined the Marine Corps, and then when I became an officer. For me, the uplands um, was a way for me to sort of deal with what was going on at work. It wasn't to get away from my family by no means, but it was for me to just refresh myself and not having to deal with all the evil and the ugliness that I had to deal with on a day-to-day basis. For me, the uplands it was a place for me to get away and just restart my life and just being out in the outdoors. People that know me, if I get a bird, if I shoot a bird, that's fine. If I don't, I can walk all day long, come home and tell my wife um, that I had a great day. And she knows that I don't have to have a bird in my bag. I don't have to shoot limits of birds or anything. That that is second for me. For me, it's just being with my friends, um, experiencing, just the outdoors, and like you said, especially with the guys that I hunt with, we're we work together, so we're all on the same page. But we find ourselves, you know, as we're hunting, to stop and just watch sunrises and sunsets and just sit there and see all the colors of the landscape. That is what brings a smile to me, because that's what I remember doing with my dad when we first came here to the US, because it was all new to us.
Okay. So I have a question I want to ask, and you mentioned it a couple times as the uplands. Can you define what you mean by that? Because I grew up in an urban setting. The closest I've ever been to anything other than that is here in Vegas, because I can go out to the desert whenever I want. What it defines uplands for you? Can you share that?
Well, when I say the uplands, it involves a wide range of environments, especially here in Kansas. The uplands to me is rolling grassy hills, tree lines, not necessarily forests, old farmsteads, transitional places where riparian fields or meet with old ag fields. But the uplands also referred to when I hunted in Colorado in late September and October. We were hunting dusky grass and sage grouse. I was in the uplands, chasing sage grouse, even though it was a completely different landscape and different environment, different habitat. Upland birds in general are just, game birds that are, on the open, wide fields, like from rocky mountains to desert fields to, corn and wheat fields here in Kansas. You have a wide gamut of environments and habitat.
Okay. Okay. So I have one more another question is, as I was prepping for the notes for today's conversation, in one of your sites, you use this term about clues to determine areas for, and these were the words, loafing feeding, and roosting. So those
Yes.
words I imagine are very familiar to you.
Yes.
And when I saw the word loafing, I got to thinking about, I was a kid, I was just loafing around. I mean, my mom wanted me to go outside and play or get out of her hair, but I was just loafing around. That was immediately what came to mind. Can you help define what those words mean in relation to, the bird hunting?
Well, you're exactly right. A place where birds loaf is going to be a place for them to just kind of hang out and relax. I mean, to put it simply, for roosters in the early morning, those who chase pheasants, a roosting area is going to be a place, probably thick grass, where they're going to be roosting overnight. And then they will walk out to a feed field or a place to feed, where they can find and locate some food. And then after they eat, what do? Just after Thanksgiving, after we gorge ourselves, we're going to go find some place to relax and loaf around. And that's the same thing as far as birds. You're going to go to a place. It may be a roosting type area as well, but they're going to go to a place where it offers protection from avian predator birds, place out of the wind if it's snowing, raining, if it's windy, for protection and cover. But basically, I mean, you pretty much define the word yourself. But
okay,
so pretty simple.
All right. What another question I'm curious about, as I was reading and listening to some of your work, is you seem to glean. I don't know if that's which one is the right word. Information about the bird and where it's been. Once you've hunted it, okay, so you've gotten the bird, but then you go and you pick it up. By the way, I want to talk about dogs. We're gonna get that's gonna be next. You have the bird in hand. What are you learning about this wild game bird as a result of having it in your hand and inspecting it?
I think you're referring to probably one of the latest articles that I wrote for Hunt to Eat. But we always check. It's always a good idea for hunters to check when they're hunting birds, the crop or the craw, which is a sac-like feature underneath their neck where they pretty much store some food. Think of it as a pantry, and you want to inspect those to see what they're eating, because that's going to help you determine the type of habitat or where to find other birds. Case in point is I was hunting out last week and we shot a couple of bobwhite quail. And as soon as we shot them, we inspected their crop, and we found a bunch of insects and milo seeds. And sure enough, about a field over was a field of uncut milo. So we knew that was a place, a food source. And, that would be a place, if we hadn't found the milo, that would be a place for us to kind of look on our Onyx maps and check out the area to see, hey, what's close by, what they're feeding on. And, as well as the insects, is to see what they're feeding on, because as you're walking along, you're kicking up a lot of grasshoppers or whatever bugs, and you want to see what kind of insects they're eating, because if there's grasshoppers and those bugs around, probably it's pretty good location to hunt birds.
Fantastic. Now, when you hunt the bird and you've got it and you're going to prep it for cooking, so I imagine you're going through this process of cleaning. We don't have to go into that, especially if you get into a lot of detail for the squeamish, perhaps me. How are you and your friends, family enjoying this bird for your meal?
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, we always store our food in freezers. And like I said earlier, most of the birds that we shoot, we tend to eat out in the field, but the ones that do make it home, it's just, we properly store it in freezer bags. And then when the time comes, depending on what kind of dish that we're going to make, there's all kinds of dishes out there, from Mediterranean to Spanish style dishes that you could use these birds in. So It's just, whatever dishes that you like to eat, it's not going to be hard to find something to use,
It,
whether it's a pheasant or a quail or some type of grouse.
now, out in the field where you're eating it, are you put it on like a spigot or cut it up, put it in a cast iron skillet? How does that working for you?
We do from very basic, very primitive to a couple of us bring a little stove and just kind of cook it up and use what we got. 2 years ago, we were being filmed for a short film, and we were wanting to do a big fancy meal, and all we had was Cheetos, and my best friend Hutch, who's a self-taught chef, started telling us, hey, I need everyone to start, crunching up these Cheeto bags, because we had a bunch of Cheeto bags that we were snacking on, and he made this Cheeto crust and made some pan-fried pheasant and quail, and they were bright orange. But I'll tell you what, it's probably one of the best pheasants dishes I've ever had in my life. It was just, had that cheesy flavor, but he was able to use what we had on hand to create a meal. And, he cooked up some potatoes, and it was amazing. And lucky because they got it all on film. But sometimes we're just plucking the birds and just kind of cooking them over an open fire and just eating it that way.
Oh my God. You are making me hungry, and I'm also thinking, okay, am I in good enough shape that I can go hang with Edgar for a weekend?
Anytime you ever want to come out, I'll get you on birds, or if you just want to follow along with the camera, just kind of see what it's all about, got an open invitation.
That sounds like fun. I'm an opportunistic guy, and so I'm going to take you up on that one.
All right.
When you guys are out there, you have dogs with you?
We do. We hunt with dogs. Yes.
Okay. Tell us more about that. What's that like?
Well, the group that I hunt with, there's about 4 or 5 of us, pretty tight knit group, and we run a series of bird dogs, pointers. We've got Drats and Bush Dressars. We've got GSPs or German short-haired pointers. We've got guys that have Labradors, guys with setters. So we're very lucky hunting behind a mix of dogs that do a variety of things, whether it's point, retrieve, or flushing.
Okay. Now, do you have your own dogs?
Actually, I do not have a bird dog, which takes a lot of people aback because I'm such a passionate bird hunter. You would assume that I had a bird dog. I did have a bird dog, but at the moment I do not. Okay. But I'm fortunate to have buddies that do have bird dogs. But I also hunt a lot on my own without a bird dog, and I do very well.
Okay. I think that relationship, it fascinates me. And I had Pat Ray, and I'm sure you met him at the conference. We published an episode last week and about his chucker hunting. Have you been chucker hunting?
No, I've not, but I talked to Pat, and there was an open invitation. So I'm trying to finagle my way to get out there sometime next season. But it looks excruciating and pretty physically demanding, but I'm up for it.
I came away with feeling that same way, but he has his 2 dogs that are with him. So that'll definitely be fun. And what I thought about this sport, and you said, you've gone out on your own, you've been successful. However, what I love about the sport is it lends itself to, the hunter and his or her dog. And I love that relationship because that's, these dogs are in their natural element based on, whether you're, like you said, they're pointing, retrieving or flushing out. How did you begin to turn these experiences into the written word?
Well, it all came about just by accident. It was about 4 years ago. I mentioned earlier when I was a little boy going to the Olathe gun shop with my dad and looking through magazines. I think I was just like anyone else is as I looked through those magazines and those photos of those dogs and those birds, I envisioned myself, man, I could do this one day, or I would love to do this one day. But then the reality set in that, I'm not a writer by trade, by teaching or by schooling, education, or anything such as that. But 4 years ago, I got introduced to social media, Instagram, and the opportunity fell into my lap. I was asked to write something, and then just from there, it just kind of blossomed, and it's just spiraled not out of control, but it's done very well for me. And then I've been able to share my stories and personal experiences as well as advice to others, and I've really enjoyed it.
Where are you able to post your work to?
It's been for a variety of magazines, e-magazines, and websites and blogs. But I've written for Project Upland, Pheasants Forever, some European journals, and a host of others.
And how did you come to discover the Outdoor Writers Association of America?
It was probably about a year and a half ago. As I started getting more involved in the outdoor writing, I'm one of those guys that if I'm going to get involved with anything, I want to be the best that I can be at something that I'm going to be doing. And so I was looking for something that could provide me with some information. There was hardly anything on the internet, or at least I just couldn't find anything when I, Googled outdoor writing, because I wanted to learn, the ins and outs, the etiquette behind, and how to do, all these little things that go behind with the outdoor writing about invoices and managing everything. And I couldn't find nothing out there. And then I came across by accident the Outdoor Writers Association. And I sent an email, and then next thing I know, I had Ches, the director, reach out to me, and I didn't know who he was at the time. And we actually spoke about 4 or 5 times exactly a year ago. And then our last conversation, I remember him telling me, Edgar, I think the Outdoor Writers Association is what you're looking for, and this is what we have to offer. And so I joined up, and it's been wonderful. It had everything that I was looking for.
That's fantastic. And this being, like me, your first annual conference, what were your big takeaways there?
Well, just like anything in any career, in any profession, especially like in law enforcement, networking is pretty much everything. It's the top thing. I walked away, you and I connected, obviously we're doing this now, but I walked away with a lot of contacts, made new friends, as well as some writing opportunities that came about from attending the conference. And I think you and I, we attended several classes or breakout sessions to improve our craft. So I walked away how to improve my writing skills, as well as new ideas on what to write about, as well as just improving my overall craft.
Definitely that. What kind of advice would you give, to an up and coming outdoor writer? And you're relatively new at this. Some of the folks you and I met have made entire careers out of it.
Oh, yeah.
Well, what advice, as somebody who's new, someone who has a passion about an aspect of the outdoors and the outdoor adventure, hunting, etc., what advice would you give to someone who really, that they really take an affinity to what you have been doing and want to do it themselves?
I would say, again, find someone who's doing it, whether they're new or, very well experienced, and find someone and then pick their brain and use them as a mentor, because that's what I was looking for. That's what I lacked. And I found it in the Outdoor Writers Association, but just, keep at it, because like I said, I was that guy that said, man, there's no way I could ever write something for a magazine. And then lo and behold, I got lucky and I kept at it. And, and then now I've got magazines and people contacting me. Hey, are you interested in, writing a piece for us? And through that, I've met more people, and those opened up more doors. So I would say, yeah, just find someone that's an outdoor writer or a photographer or a podcaster, whatever they're involved in or whatever their interest is in, and sit down and talk to them and see how they went about getting into it, and then using that to build a platform to get involved or get into outdoor writing.
Okay. As you look back on your career, well, not really your career in law enforcement or the military, but look back in your affinity for the outdoors, spending time with your family, your father, hunting with your friends, and now the writing. As you look back, what is one or two like big surprises? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I get to do this. Anything kind of jump out at you, where you've like, stop in your footsteps and go, oh wow, this is cool stuff.
It would have to be being labeled as an outdoor writer. We talked about this earlier, and to me, just someone saying that, it still feels funny. But when I just got a magazine in the mail just a couple of days ago, and I had a story from a Arizona trip from 3 years ago, and my wife was like, congratulations, I'm very proud of you. And I can't believe that, I'm opening up a magazine there, and the photography and the words that I wrote, are staring right back at me, and I'm able to share those experiences and hopefully encourage someone else to either write or get out there and bird hunt, or just get out outdoors and just chase your dreams. So it just, the whole outdoor writing aspect of it is just, it's still new to me. And I can't believe that I'm here talking to you, no one. And it's very strange.
Okay. Now, by the way, this is the coach in me, Edgar, because that's the other part of my life. You're going to have to stop saying, I can't believe I'm no one.
Yeah.
Okay. You got to get that out of your vocabulary today. Starts today, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
I know that. I'm a very proactive. You find, if you knew me when I was an officer, I'm the type A personality. I was like that as a Marine. I was very successful as well as a detective and a task force officer. But this thing, and then going to the conference and seeing all these people that are around me, I'm like, what am I doing here? I am just way out of my element. So yeah, you're right. But I don't know. It's just, I don't like the spotlight, and
Well,
I don't feel like I'm
get used to it, my friend. Get used to it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm curious, any other adventures coming up that you're looking forward to? Where, I mean, you've got the writing, obviously with the wife, you got the cooking and the hunting. Anything else coming up that's really going to further kind of expand this new area for you? Just kind of bringing it all together.
Not really. I mean, I'm continuing writing. I'm writing for various magazines. I mean, obviously, I'm going to still be bird hunting, but as far as, because I've tied the bird hunting and the outdoor writing together, we do have when I say we, my friends, we have a short film coming out through Project Upland where we were featured. So that'll be coming out soon, hopefully. And we did a short film last year with the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks where they showcased the diversity. So I got asked to do that. It's a short little 3-minute clip, but because of that was very successful. We're looking into maybe branching out and doing more of those types of filming hunts and short videos, but we'll see what happens. But for right now, I'm content with what I'm doing.
That sounds great. And, anytime we can spend time outside with friends, family, and getting exercise, do things we love. I mean, that really, that's what life should be about, not just working for a living. So.
Yeah.
Edgar, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, where are the best places for them to go?
Well, I find the easiest way would be just do a quick Google search of my name, Edgar Castillo, and then type upland hunting behind it, and you'll get a slew of things, articles, and podcasts that I've done. But probably one of the biggest places that you can find most of my content material is Project Upland with my name behind it, Edgar Castillo, and you'll see all my articles that I've written for them.
Okay. Fantastic. And I know you're on some of the top social sites like Facebook, Instagram, and also you have a LinkedIn profile as well.
Yep, correct. The Instagram would probably be the easiest place to find me as far as my photographs. And then I also put out the content material that I write. I promote it on there. But yeah, either Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram.
Fantastic. And yeah, I'm just very, again, grateful to have you on the show and can make for another fantastic episode, and really appreciate you taking the time to join me today, Edgar.
Well, thank you, Howard, for having me on as a guest, and hopefully I was able to answer your questions and provide a little bit of entertainment and, as well as some information to your listeners. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out to me. And if there's anything I can do for you, Howard, just let me know, and I'd be more than happy to.
Well, I do appreciate that. And again, just think of this as a growing relationship, good friendship. And really, anytime I and my listeners learn something new, and that's the goal, make the world a better place and take care of ourselves, our family, our friends, and just be good out in the environment, in nature. So thank you so much. Stay on the line. We're going to do a quick close and you and I can have a final chat. Okay.
All right.
All right, folks, we have just been chatting with Edgar Castillo. He is an accomplished outdoor adventure writer, and his specialty is in the whole area of hunting out in the wild landscapes for wild birds in all these wild places, not only in his home state of Kansas, but also in the U.S. as well. So, hey, wherever there's an open field, tree lines, thickets, if there's wild birds out there, chances are someone like Edgar is going to have some interest in perhaps having a visit. And, we learned a little bit about what it takes to get into this hobby, some of the lessons learned about once you do happen to get your wild bird, and what to look for when you pick it up. We've talked about a little bit about cooking, how he's preparing with his wife, either at home or with his friends out in the field. One thing we didn't ask him, I probably should have asked Edgar, I'm going to ask you right now, does your wife go hunting with you?
I know she does not.
Okay. All right. So, we found that out too, but she's probably, we know she's got to be an accomplished cook, and with his mother, preparing these wonderful meals. So we're going to definitely try to finagle a recipe as well as some pictures of Edgar's adventures. Folks, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. These are the types of episodes we look forward to, folks out there really pursuing their passions, their interests. And, the big tie back here is Edgar and I met at the Outdoor Writers Association's of America's annual conference this past October in Jay Peak, Vermont. What a wonderful place, and really grateful to have Edgar on the show as well. Okay, folks, you can find us on the Outdoor Adventure Series.com website. That's our new website devoted to these outdoor adventure episodes. You can also find us on Facebook and on LinkedIn. The episodes are still going to post on the Success Insight podcast pages there. We are also on the major podcasting platforms, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, Audible, and Spotify, where we have the Outdoor Adventure Series playlist. Eventually, we'll have podcast platforms devoted to the Outdoor Adventure Series, but right now, those two can be found by just searching for Success Insight. If you enjoyed this episode or any other episode, we want to hear from you. Please send us a note. Let us know what you thought of the episode. And if you have some ideas for other episodes, we want to hear that. as well. If you have stories that you would like to share, very similar to the one we just did today with Edgar, we'd love to hear from you. If it's a good fit, we'll definitely invite you to come on and record an episode with us. I think once this episode drops later this month, we're going to be well over 100 episodes this year. I think we're going to be close to about 116-ish, somewhere in that vicinity. So it's been a busy year, but we have thoroughly enjoyed ourselves and what we've accomplished, especially with this outdoor adventure series. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, go out there, have a phenomenal day, and we will see you on a future episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series podcast. Take care now.